Hey guys, I'm Jonathan Belinski. I'll be hosting Filmmakers World's Q&A. So we've already gotten a lot of good questions. If you haven't answered already, please keep them coming. I'm going to try to answer all of them. A little bit about me. I'm a cinematographer. I've been one for 25 years. Started my career at NYU Film School many moons ago. Everybody else wanted to be a writer-director that was there, as did I. Quickly realized that a director has to be involved in a project for a really long period of time, from script to post. As a DP, I was able to migrate from project to project, constantly evolving, changing looks, trying new things. And that really appealed to me. I did everything from getting coffee to being a PA on corporate videos. Any way I can get on set, I did so. And one day I got my lucky break. I ended up shooting this little thing with Kate Moss for Calvin Klein. Not really a huge project, but at the time it was enormous for me, and that kind of helped take things off. It wasn't all smooth sailing, but now I've shot everything from Super Bowl commercials to the intro to the Super Bowl to working with tons of the top celebrities in the world. So anyway, I hope you can have a similar path or one that even surpasses that. So let's get started with the questions. How do you feel about RGB LED lighting technology? Well, I'll show you how I feel about it. I mean, this is the new Astera Titan tube I'm holding here. It's actually what's lighting this whole thing. I mean, I can just, with the remote control, change fire effects, go to ice, make it yellow. Just incredible things with a remote control or an app-based thing. They are DMX capable as well, but this also democratizes, essentially brings DMX to the masses now, which is a really incredibly cool thing. In the old days, you used to have to gel everything. Now I can suddenly, dial in a little bit of green or a little bit of magenta to change a scene. It's incredible. You can reduce the luminance of a shot without affecting color temperature. So, I think it seems like we live in a day and age where every 6 months there's a new camera system coming out. But for the longest time, lighting's been pretty stable. I mean, for a good long time, it was a very steady development. Of course, we had arc lights, then we had HMIs. We moved on to fluorescent, where KinoFlow was at the forefront of that. But it was very gradual, and in the last 5 years or so, it's just gone straight up. You have Aries sky panels, you have Asteras, you have Quasar Science, you have Digital Sputnik, Gemini. There's just so many manufacturers out there making amazing tools. I think it's here to stay until something supplants it. Additionally, lightning strikes. Love lightning strikes. We all do. With CMOS sensors, you'd often get tearing and rolling shutters and things like that. Much less so, if at all, with RGB technology and LED technology. You can create lighting effects without that occurring. I mean, it's just amazing. So, yeah, I'm a fan.
Rose was lucky in our first fight. I think she's a fluke. Not this time.
Hey guys, we're back. Moving along with some more questions here. Do you really need to do a master's course of some sort of university-approved course in filmmaking or specifically cinematography to get into the industry? I've already done a filmmaking course, but don't know if I should go for a master's course. Here's the short answer. Absolutely not do you need to go to a film school. I think it gives you a little bit of a head start, but you also have to understand it's very expensive. You could be spending that time doing other things, actually getting into the industry. I'm not telling you one way or the other what to do. It's a different path for everybody. As far as master's courses go, I think that's a better approach if you want to be a teacher. If you want to get into film theory, that sort of thing. Do you prefer projects that require bright and poppy or dark and gritty? I don't have a preference. I think that's not always my choice. I think the project, the director, the script, the agency, or depending on what it is you're doing, will set the tone for how the look should be. It doesn't mean you shouldn't put your 2 cents worth in. That's why they're hiring you. But often, it's already dictated ahead of time. This should be a bright, happy car commercial, or this is a dark, gritty, Seven-looking type movie. What was your first camera? Well, my very first camera was an Aeroflex SR2. It wasn't truly mine. I kind of had it with a couple of guys. It was a workhorse. It was an amazing camera. My first camera that I fully owned myself was an Aton XTR Pride, a true Super 16mm camera. Still to this day, the most ergonomically designed camera I think ever. They called it a cat on your shoulder. It was serviced by, you guys are familiar with Able Cine, but Peter Able had an office out in Staten Island back in the day, and they were the primary servicer and provider and retailer of Aton. So I was in there all the time. Tremendous camera. You know, to tell you the truth, I put the down payment down with largely poker winnings at the time. In our industry, in this position, you need to be good at math, probabilities, outcomes, that sort of thing. And if you don't have that skill set, you need to learn it. You need to learn about contrast ratios. I mean, there's a lot of mathematics involved in what we do. Subsequently sold that camera. Now, of course, Super 16's back and it's popular again. So what does anybody know? Okay, another question. What camera do you use the most? It happens to be sitting right next to me. It's the Red Helium 8K camera. There are many cameras out there that are exceptional. I'm not here to do an advertisement. I'm not paid by anybody. This is my preferred camera. Reason being, I started out shooting Red many years ago when I made the shift from film because they were kind of the first to really adopt this new technology. Yes, it had its problems, but they've since squashed 99% of them. I love the resolution. I love the workability. I've been in their ecosystem for so long. I love the service I get from them. When I was first considering buying this camera, a service rep came to my house, gave me one for a couple days to test out. I put it through its paces, and you know, I became sold. It's not to say there aren't a million other cameras out there that aren't capable of creating, you know, amazing images. It's just, this is my preference. Hey guys, we're back. Here's the question I've gotten the most. There's so many of them, I'm just gonna put it into one big question. Essentially, Arri versus Red, and why? Doesn't matter. I could end the question just right there. It's not going to majorly impact how your film looks at this point. We've come very close to parity at the higher end of both of these cameras. I think it comes down to preference at this point. I opted for Red because transitioning from film to digital, they were just first. So, you know, of course they had their trials and tribulations of being the first to walk on the moon, and they had a lot of issues to work out. And subsequently, I think they have. They leapfrogged each other over the years. I mean, early on, a lot of networks mandated that I shoot Red because they wanted a certain resolution. That higher resolution has also saved my butt numerous times. I've had to push in and do face replacement surgery, you know, on celebrities and like literally change a face out. I've had to zoom in to cut out boom poles, image stabilization, post-production CGI type work. It's helpful to have a really large image. Some of the downside to Red, of course, was fan noise. Early on, their color space was not as good as Arri. Arri just looked tremendous right out of the box. I think most of these issues have been solved on both sides. One of the other advantages of Red was the size of it, the form factor. You could get it on a Movi. Now the Alexa Mini exists. So it's really preference. They're both tremendous cameras. Nobody's arguing that Arri doesn't make a tremendous camera. I'd include Sony Venice in that. I just don't think this question's all that important. I know a lot of television and whatnot have gravitated towards Arri because of the ProRes capabilities. Red can now do that, as well as DNX. And Arri's increased their frame rates and their image size. So take your pick. For me, this is just comfort level. I have 16 other things to deal with on set. This doesn't need to be one of them. Do you like 70mm? I'm assuming we're talking about, I've got a lot of questions about this. I'm assuming we're talking about large format and not a lens. Otherwise, I'm about to go off on a tangent that makes absolutely no sense at all. Yes, emphatically yes. It's amazing large format. You know, whether it's IMAX, Super 65mm film, the Alexa 65, Red's intro to the space, you know, VistaVision size. Beautiful image quality, really shallow depth of field, stunning imagery. I think it translates better on the big screen. Of course, it still translates to television, but not quite the same impact. Practical reasons not to shoot that. Why wouldn't you shoot that if it's the best? Not a lot of lens choices. Manufacturers are catching up with that, but it's going to take a little while. I'm happy with what I've seen so far, but it's got a little ways to go on that topic. It's also expensive if you're talking about film. In the digital world, I guess it's expensive in terms of the amount of data it generates. Plus, there's not as many accessories available. The cameras are a little bulkier in general. It's just not as ideal for day-to-day production, but that's what makes it special, and I kind of like it that way. I think it should be a special thing when you shoot large format. How important is it to watch more films to be a filmmaker? I think it's critical to watch films. Also, music videos, commercials. Often that's where the cutting-edge stuff's happening first. Watch Citizen Kane. I know the movie's very old. I know it's in black and white, but it basically wrote the alphabet for filmmaking at this point. There were so many advances in that film that it's just unbelievable. It's what we use now. It's the Rosetta Stone for filmmaking. So you can go that far back, and you can come to more recent works, study lighting, read American Cinematographer, digest as much information as you can on the web or wherever else to find out techniques on how they achieve these things, and then try and incorporate it in your own work. What's the most important element for DOP making videos? That's a pretty broad question and a good one. Not any one answer. I think the number one thing is cooperation and communication, which kind of go hand in hand. It takes a village to do this, guys. Yes, you can go out on your own and shoot a little doc project with very little, help from other people, but on bigger projects, there might be 50 to 100, 150 people on set, and you need to know what everybody's doing. You need to respect what they're doing. They're there for a reason. Communication ahead of time of a shoot is just critical. Communication, preparation. What is the most impactful thing you've learned during your career? I don't know if there's any one thing that I've learned. I will say that someone pulled me aside once, a very famous gaffer, and said, guys, we're not saving lives here, we're making films. And that just gives you a little bit of perspective. It takes tremendous drive to be successful. You have to sacrifice a lot. I had another producer friend that asked me, guess how many birthday parties and weddings I've missed? I reply, how many? All of them. It takes sacrifice. But remember, you should try to find some work-life balance. It's not the end of the world if you have a bad shoot. You should try to find some happiness in life and enjoy what you're doing, because if you're miserable all the time, why are you doing this anymore? Chris Valentino 328, actually a friend of mine and a collaborator. How do you handle difficult directors or clients? Well, Chris, handling you has been quite difficult over the years. I honestly, that has never been a huge problem of mine. As long as you understand where they're coming from, I think very few people are difficult without, I respect their difficultness. It's because they're trying to achieve something. Once you understand what they're after, it doesn't upset me if somebody blows up on set. Later at the bar, we're having drinks. We just need to have a common goal. So for me, it's not a huge problem. I've heard horror stories. We all have. I haven't encountered that many. What is it like working with celebrities? Does it change the process? Absolutely it does. They're under tremendous time constraints, so it's very different. I hate to say it, but some of my best work has been done without celebrities because you just have a lot more time. With a celebrity, they have a really busy schedule. It might, they might have just done Good Morning America, then they're coming to your shoot and they have 5 other obligations. Plus they want to have a life. So I try to be very respectful of celebrities and top athletes and those types of people. If we got the shot, everybody's happy, you move on. You don't just keep doing takes, for the sake of it, unless there's a reason. you'd be polite, you'd be professional, and in kind. I've had very few bad experiences. They're very professional too, as long as you treat them the same way. Just understand your time's going to be a little bit more limited. You got to plan things out more, and you got to move quickly. King Condal. Adam Condal. If you don't know who that is, follow him. King Condal. Amazingly talented producer, director. A lot of those UFC promos that you see, he's the director, producer on them. He's asking, can you tell us about a few shoots that were extraordinarily difficult and why? Could be due to conditions, time constraints, inherent danger of the shoot, etc., etc., etc. Yeah, I've had a lot of tough shoots over the years. I think we all have. Even you and I together, buddy. One of the most difficult ones was we were filming this sports feature doc sort of thing with my friend Matt Schleff, who was the director producer on it. And on the big day, we had this football player that had all the NFL scouts there, and it was just him, and it was supposed to be this spectacular thing right when the movie came out. It was still a new toy and was still unique. Pouring rain. I mean, cats and dogs. We thought we were done. Things were shorting out. The Teradeks weren't working. I mean, it was just a nightmare. The Movi at its time was not, the Movi Pro that's, super sophisticated now. It was still, kind of a little bit in its infancy. Covered everything with garbage bags and, just tried to get through it and thought the shoot was going to be a disaster. Ended up getting some of the most beautiful footage of my career. Got nominated for the Emmy that year for Best Cinematography in Sports. So, I mean, sometimes you can turn rain into sunshine. All right, we're back. Chris TV writes, what's your favorite high-speed shot you've ever done? I've had a lot of favorite high-speed shots. My personal favorite, a friend, a frequent collaborator, super talented guy, Todd Capostasi. Give him a follow at Todd Cap. Super talented director, producer, has won a gazillion Emmys, whatnot. We were doing this promotional video for a network, new network launch, and shooting Phantom High Speed. The shot called for a bouquet of flowers to hit someone in the face. Todd volunteered, and not only that, he put talcum powder and whatnot on it so the effect would be even more explosive. The talent hit him so hard, the guy was clearly in pain. The shot came out great, and that's my personal favorite. On a bigger scale, very early on when the Phantom was in its infancy, we, with Mike Hughes as producer, we did this huge intro to the BCS championship game. Had this whole stadium rented out, full-on football teams on either side, 20K lights everywhere, smoked it up. Got this shot of a guy diving to the end zone with the football at 2,000 frames a second. It was just spectacular. Still on my reel to this day. What's the craziest thing that's ever happened on a shoot? I have too many that I could possibly name. Probably for legal reasons, can't name most of them. I've had 4 emergency landings. You fly a lot in this industry where I was unable to get to a shoot or got late to a shoot. I've flown to a foreign country a gazillion miles away and not had talent be there. I've been thrown off stage at a rock concert by a famous singer. Ones that I can talk about, I think this one was kind of humorous. Paul McCartney had been out of the limelight for a little while. This is many moons ago. And we were filming on this yacht. And paparazzi caught wind of it and started circling the boat and creating, wake. So the boat's like going like this. So I had a tight shot of Sir McCartney. It would be on his face. It would go to the ceiling. It would go to the ground, back to him, back to the ceiling. I threw up. Not my proudest moment. I'm grateful everybody was really cool about it. So there you go. We can cut that one out. How do you feel about filtration, glimmer glass, etc.? Horses for courses. There's times I might use a quarter black pro mist or something, or whatnot. Used to shoot film far more so. I'd use filtration. Now I tend to mostly use NDs, polarizers, graduated filters, things like that. Occasionally I'll use a filter for effect, but it's gotten so good in post that often I'll add that in post, so I'm not so limited. I don't think you should be afraid to use filtration, but just test it out. Have you ever experienced a dry period of ideas or caught in the same routine working on projects? What's your advice on keeping yourself creative? That's a great question. Absolutely, yes, that has occurred. And it's something you should be careful of having happen to you. I don't feel like I personally don't have other creative ideas. I think just what kind of happens on the business aspect of it. Certain looks get hot. Years ago, it was the blue streak filters to kind of mimic anamorphic flares. You do that on one project, and then for a totally different client, they're like, oh, that's really cool. Let's do that for our project. And before you know it, at the end of the year, your reel is all blue streak filters. Flares, for the longest time, we tried to get rid of them. Now they become hot again. The more flares, the better kind of thing. After a while, I think that gets old. I think it's a cool effect when used judiciously under the right conditions, but to just arbitrarily have it happen constantly, you don't want to always do the same thing over and over again. So my advice on how to get past that is to keep developing new ideas. Push yourself to try new ideas. Experiment on your own time, not on your client's time. Ultimately, if they want the blue streak filter and this is the look, you got to give it to them, even if it's, you don't want to play Freebird for the 3,000th time. You want to hit them with your new material. Recording NTSC in a PAL region. Any possible issues with that? Yeah, absolutely. I primarily shoot in the United States, so we shoot NTSC primarily. When I go overseas, lighting units now are so sophisticated that they're switchable, so it's not going to be your lights necessarily that are going to be the problem. It's going to be practicals and things that may flicker. So you got to watch your shutter angles, that sort of thing, your frame rates, whatnot, to try to eliminate that. Can be a little bit of an issue. Now, PAL conversion used to be a nightmare. Nowadays, it's not as difficult as it once was. You can shoot PAL in a PAL region and then convert back. I mean, often I'm shooting for international and domestic. So you can get around it that way as well. Monster Cam Poland, best lens and a good price. Monster Cam Poland, love you, man. You've been following me for years. We've had a lot of correspondence on Instagram. That's a really tough question. It really depends on what you mean by good price. I currently own a set of I own a lot of lenses, but I currently own a set of these, which are the Leica Semicrons. To me, they're the best value for my needs. They're barrel and weight matched, so like you see the 50 is the same size as the 35, which is pretty amazing. Same weight, everything. So when you're changing a lens from a Movi to an 18 to a 25 to a 35, there's very little rebalancing. Everything happens very quickly. On top of that, it's a very neutral look. It's still a beautiful, soft look. Leica makes some of the best glass in the world. I don't think anybody questions that. They're not that cheap, but they're half the price of Semiluxes. I hope that's worth something. Aside from that, if you're looking at like a much lower price range, I've heard good things about some of these new cameras that have come out. The new lenses like the Sigma and the Tokinas, and some of these like 18 to 35s, and like they've been cine modified. I know Matthew Duclos and Duclos Lenses does a great job on doing a lot of that kind of stuff. Not my area of expertise. I don't really use a lot of glass like that. I will say the Otis and the Melvis, in terms of still lenses that are semi-affordable, beautiful image quality. I don't believe they're parafocal, so it's going to be difficult for you to track focus and things like that. But for an interview or a close-up or whatever, I mean, it's a pretty stunning lens for an inexpensive amount of money. I'm sure there's more out there. I'm just not your guy on that one. I wish I could be, buddy. Chris TV, do you have a favorite lens? I have a favorite type of lens, the 35 millimeter. Without a doubt, the 35 millimeter, if I could only shoot with one lens for the rest of my life, it would be a 35 millimeter prime. I just think it gives you the most versatility. You can get a compressed wide shot, you can get a medium shot, you can get a close-up on someone who's got facial features that can handle that. It's not something you want to put at minimum object distance up on everybody, but certain people can take it, and it's a really cool look. Something you should try, by the way. It's one of my favorite looks. If you're talking about manufacturers, obviously I'm partial to Leica because I like their neutrality. I like that it's neutral but still has some sex appeal to it. Like, it's not just flat and stale, it has personality. But I love Cooke optics. I mean, if we're getting into anamorphics, I love what Hawke has done. I love Primo's, Zeiss Master Primes, stunning lenses. Have not had a lot of time to work with the Supremes yet, but I really want to put them through their paces. I mean, there's a lot of tremendous glass out there. And if you want to get into the classic glass, there's the K35s, there's Lomo anamorphics. There's a lot of stuff out there. I'm sure I'm forgetting a few, but like, there's not one favorite lens for me, but I can give you a favorite focal length. Okay, so here's another question. The 75 to 300 or the 55 to 250? I believe you're talking about still telephoto EF lenses. Not my strong suit. They're huge ranges. EF mounts, you will have a stop loss when you get to one end of the range, like the longer you go. If you can only purchase one, I would recommend getting the 55 to 250, assuming we're talking about Super 35 or full frame or something in that neighborhood. Only because you're going to need to get wider than that to be able to shoot day-to-day stuff. And in a Super 35 aspect ratio, I can count on my hand in 1 week the number of times I get above 250. I mean, it's very rare. So I think it'll be more versatile for you, and just watch out for that stop loss. You got to account for that. Drew asks, how much do you worry about keeping consistent lighting ratios throughout the piece? Light meter, false color, or do you use your eye? That's a fantastic question. I think cinematography's come full circle. We started with film, where we relied on luminance meters, incident meters, spot meters, color temperature meters, contrast glass. All these type of old school things that really taught discipline and made you a better cinematographer or a gaffer or whatever it is you do. Then I think we reached a little error where everybody was judging everything off monitors, which was a mistake. And we've come full circle now where the cinema cameras, the digital cinema cameras, are competing with the film cameras at such a level that I almost can't tell the difference. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you, most of the time I can't tell the difference. And we've come back to meters becoming important again. So if you're lighting a green screen or a white cyc or any scene, using a meter is important. You're recording a raw image. Whether it's Airy Raw or Red Raw or what have you, or some other codec of another manufacturer, what you're seeing on the monitor is metadata. It's a LUT. It's not reality. So using meters really keeps you grounded in what you're doing. I think it creates discipline again. So I think it's very important and it's very useful. Most important to me is a color temperature meter, especially as we moved into RGB lighting and full spectrum lighting, where they can read fluorescent tubes and read odd colors and tell you the mirrored shift and let you know if it's a little magenta or a little green. And those little nuances are great if you're looking for a really clean look. Like, you need to know that, because trying to get that in post is difficult, it's time consuming, and it's unnecessary, and it's really your job to get it clean if that's what you're looking to do. So I think it's very important to use light meters of all sorts. Additionally, false color, if it's useful to you, use it. I'm not a huge fan of it. I do use RGB parades. I occasionally will look at a waveform monitor in a certain situation, potentially lighting a white cyc or a green screen. But for the most part, I trust my meters. And above all else, you brought up a great point. Nothing more important than your eye. So if I have the luxury of a pre-light day and we can do some tests, I will always take that footage, bring it into the DIT room and take a look at it, apply a LUT, create a LUT, and see what it really looks like, because that's the ultimate arbiter. Is your unique lighting style a conscious choice, or did it develop naturally over time? Man, you guys have such good questions. I have to think about that. I mean, I honestly don't know the answer to that. I think we're often influenced by other people. I think sometimes we copycat each other, but then eventually you find your own style. So you might take a piece of A and a piece of B and combine it and make your C. It's almost like cooking, like a chef. There's a limited amount of ingredients out there in the world, and it depends on like how you combine them. And I think that's finding your own style. So I don't know if I could put my finger on how I found my own style. I think it's trial and error. I think it's constantly changing. And I hope it's the same for you. I think it would be a very boring situation to always have the same look or be known for a certain look. I think we should always be evolving and challenging ourselves and, you know, be excited about what we do. From Ross Benedetto, which was your best work of ever and why? That's an impossible question. My best work is yet to come. I know that's a cop-out answer, but I look at my work from years past and sometimes I cringe. You know, sometimes I would do things differently now. I think we all evolve as filmmakers and constantly change things. So I don't have any one work that I love more than the other. The next one's going to be the best one. Okay, here's another question. How can I promote my work? In my day, you had your reels and you'd put them on VHS or 3/4 inch tapes, and you'd have to send them out to places, and it was an expensive process and a time-consuming process. Nowadays, you have Vimeo, you have Instagram, you have ways to self-promote. I highly encourage you to do that. It's a difficult thing, and sometimes it's uncomfortable. You kind of have to humble brag, like I'm doing right now, to be honest with you. But you have to get out there. It democratizes it a bit. You can get discovered. It's a great tool and a great resource. Irene Wangi asks, to celebrate the completion of a project, which champagne should I get? Irene's a great friend of mine and a long-time collaborator. Irene, if you're buying, get the best one. If I'm buying, get the second to best one. You can never go wrong. I think that's a great one to end on. I'd like to thank Filmmakers World for this opportunity. I hope you enjoyed the Q&A. If you have more questions, keep them coming. You can hit me up. You can hit Filmmakers World up, and I'll try to answer more. Keep shooting, get out there, and I look forward to seeing your work.